So one of the questions that we get more frequently than any other is, how do I justify headcount? Well, you have to realize that aviation and the core company really look at headcount in different ways. So let's say that the core company is not an aviation company. Let's say that it's a software company or a banking services company. So we're gonna ask you a question. So in the core company, how many work hours are in a work year in the core company generally? Anybody know? 2080. And so in aviation, if we said we want our pilots to fly 2,080 hours a year, we would have no pilots. So the way that headcount and work is defined in the core company is completely different than the way we define it in aviation. Because in aviation, business aviation, our most common metric is days, duty days. So you have to have this relationship that comes to the parent company with that kind of an explanation. And here they want just the facts. They don't want an opinion. They want to know what is relevant to your particular company. How many days of demand do you have? How many days of supply in terms of labor do you have? How does that line up? So there are two different types of companies that we have here today. So Candace is in a startup situation. So when you came on board, how did you do this, and what were the things that were most important to you in terms of setting up your organization?
Well, it was wonderful because, to be able to basically design a flight department from scratch, right? Clean sheet it. You could build this organization that you felt would just optimize for the assumptions and, the value add you were going to have to the executive traveling team. But it was interesting because one of the biggest challenges I faced is, I was very declarative about what the org chart for this new business unit would look like. And they had purchased the jet, so I knew they were committed to this effort. I had no idea the challenge that laid before me to actually get that head count, especially being a technology company in California. They manage headcount by using a lot of contractors and, contingent workforce. And so when they first came to me and I had this org of 8 and they said, you can have 5. I was like, what? I can't do it with 5. But it started this, conversation about, well, why does this contingent workforce model not work for aviation? And again, went back on this education process and, finding advocates and, building that, educating people to help support me in actually achieving what I needed to achieve. But it was a journey, for sure.
So in a new organization, when you're starting a new organization, one of the critical things that we advocate is create real role descriptions. Don't go with vanilla job descriptions.
Yeah.
Create real role descriptions that are specifically attuned to this startup activity. Because I think, as Candace would attest, the hiring is critical. Yeah. You must get the right people in the roles the first time.
People are your most important assets, and hiring is the most important thing you do.
This is also really hard, right? So I've built teams from scratch a few times, and every time I do it, it is daunting.
It's hard.
Getting the budget for the people is actually the easy part, in my opinion. It's getting them in the door, trained, operating effectively, and making sure you're aware of how to keep them. I think that's equally hard, maybe.
Yeah.
So turnover, if you don't make the right hiring decisions, turnover is both expensive and it's disruptive. How expensive? can be $200,000 to $300,000 for a pilot, and they're not really productive for the first year.
That's correct.
Takes a year to get somebody up to speed. So what do you want to look for? What are the most important things to look for to make sure that you're retaining your folks? I advocate that the most important thing is quality of life. Quality of life that is important to them, not you, but their definition of quality of life. And especially for the younger folks, outlining their growth potential. What does their career path look like? How are you defining their career path? And how are they going to succeed in their career? And if they are not clear on it, you help get them clear on it, because that's a 6-month step all along the path. So really being clear. So in terms of how big is the staff, well, you got to use some tools to come up with really good empirical data that you can take to your leadership and to your HR folks and to your reporting executive to show what you need. Remember, Candace started with 5, right? And you had to go to them with the empirical data. So there are lots of tools out there. One is Greystone's Crew Count. You can read about it on the website. It's not an ad, but it is a tool, and it produces empirical data for you to go to your execs with. But boy, this headcount thing that's the biggest question that we get all the time.
And I'll just say it again because I think it's so important. Should we really, based on the number of days that you're flying, not necessarily hours, we tend to get wrapped up in, hours. And I think that's the wrong metric.